Praise the Lord, everyone, and welcome back. As we continue to talk about God's providence, I do want us to reflect on everything we've been learning and carry it through with us. And yesterday we looked at James chapter 1, verse 13 to learn that God does not lead us to evil. He doesn't lead us to temptation. But the Bible does tell us in Romans chapter 8, verse 28, that all the things that we go through, our trial and our tribulation, work for good. And they work out according to His perfect will and to His plan. So as we reach, kind of the end of our topic of God's providence, we are going to dive into talking about our relationship to God's providence. Even though we've read Romans chapter 8, verse 28, and we know that all things work for good, we can't expect that our continued and maintained sin or our negligence to the things in our lives will result in a blessing. We do have certain responsibilities to uphold as believers and as people who want to experience the fullness of God's providence. So in order to fully experience God's providence in our lives, we do have certain responsibilities to carry out as well. Romans chapter 8, verse 28. If you remember, that verse has a set of words in there that I want to focus on today, and that says God's perfect will. His perfect will. For those who love God, we can see that things work out according to His perfect will. So one of our first responsibilities as believers is to love Him. That's it. Simply love God. Love Him with all you have, and what a privilege and what an honor it is to love Him and submit to His perfect will. We talked a little bit about this at the beginning when we spoke of preservation and provision, that God who created you, He will not leave you, but constantly, every day, He works to provide and to preserve your life. Jeremiah chapter 29 verse 11 says, I know the plans that I have for you, and they're plans to prosper you and plans to make you succeed. And if at every moment and every step of the way we choose to distrust God and doubt Him and choose sin and choose our own fleshly desires and will, then we cannot fully experience what God's providence is. We can't experience the entirety of it in our lives. But when we choose to love Him consistently, and love also means trust Him, then He will make us prosper, and the plan that is His perfect plan for our future, for our lives, for your career, for anything, because we love Him so much, we will find it easy to follow His will. And we'll find it easy to submit to His will. And going in line with His love and submission to His will, the second responsibility I want to touch on today is the responsibility to obey His will. To fully experience God's providence, we also have to live a life of obedience. Throughout the Old Testament of the Bible, you can really see how much obedience and that submission to whatever God tells you can really turn into a blessing in your life. If we look at Abraham, when he finally had his son Isaac and God asked him to sacrifice Isaac, it was not an easy decision at all. But he went with Isaac and he was going to sacrifice him. And right at that very moment, when he had, got everything set up and he was going to do it, God said, no, don't sacrifice him. Because even when you go through those moments in your life where the decision is hard and it's almost as though, how can God ask me to do this? But you decide, I'm going to follow Him and I'm going to submit to His perfect will and show my love by following Him completely, just as He shows me His love every day. The things that we do will always work out for the better according to His perfect will. And we can see that in Joseph's life. It's obvious to see when you read Joseph's story throughout the book of Genesis that Joseph really chose to obey God whenever he was presented with a choice. Whenever he had to make a decision, he chose to follow God and to obey Him. And in the end, as you know, it resulted in a huge blessing. If you would turn to Proverbs chapter 3, we'll read verse 5 to 7, and I'm going to be reading for you from an NIV version as well. And it says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to him, and he will make your path straight. Do not be wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord and shun evil." Remember that to look for God and see his instruction and acknowledge him, one of the biggest things we can do is do that through our obedience. And we always know that he is leading us forward. He's leading us to his perfect plan. All of our paths will be made straight as soon as we decide we are going to follow God 100%. And in this way, we can experience his providence every step of the way, all the way down that path, right till the end of our race with Christ. May this be an encouragement to you today to trust God and show him your love and submit to his will and be obedient to him as you continue on. Thanks so much for joining me again. I can't wait to sit with you tomorrow.